Good evening, good afternoon. Welcome to Faith, Lies, and Confusion. I am Godless Reggie, your host. Today's a special episode of our show. It's titled The Legend of Al Zutt. This particular topic has been something that I've been speaking about for probably about the past month or so. Until then, I was 100% unaware of Al Zutt. Uh, Never heard anything about it. It came to me kind of in a joking manner. Um, there's a fellow people that are in my atheist community that I conversate with on TikTok daily, and they brought it to my attention. Some of these people they were from the Hindu faith. Well, they're actually non-believers, but they got this information from people who were either in the Hindu faith or former believers. I would have to say that are still in it. I'm gonna go with that based on the fact that people that are into dharmic religions don't believe the same way that people from Abrahamic religions believe. Um, with people that have an Abrahamic belief, in most circumstances, it's more about the proof of the existence of God and He's Almighty and all knowing and things like that. People from dharmic religions, they it's not what it's predicated on. But that's besides the fact. So let's do a little research on this Al Zutt because I know most people that are watching or hearing about this, they have no idea what I'm mentioning, and I don't blame them because a few weeks ago I was 100% ignorant about this. But let's talk about it. Give me a second here. Yeah, I'm going to pull something out from one of my favorite things to source, which is ChatGPT about Al Zutt. Well, the Al Zutt, also written as Azut or simply Zoot, were a group of people of Indian origin who were brought to the Middle East, particularly Iraq, during the early centuries of the Islamic Caliphate. Key facts about the Zoot: ethnic and geographic origins. The Zoot were originally from the Indian subcontinent, likely the Sindh region in modern day Pakistan. The term Zoot is derived from the Arabic transliteration of Jat or Zoot, referring to an ethnic group from India. Migration to the Middle East. Many Zoot were brought to the Middle East by the Umayyads and later the Abbasid Caliphate as part of military labor or slave contingents. They were settled in southern Iraq, especially in the marshlands around Basra and the Euphrates and Tigris rivers. Rebellion against Abbasids, and I apologize if I'm pronouncing any of this incorrectly. In the ninth century, a group of Zoot in Iraq led a rebellion against the Abbasid authorities. Their leader was Al Jabbar, and they used the marshy terrain to their advantage, resisting government control for years. Eventually, the Abbasids crushed the rebellion and dispersed the Zoot across the empire to prevent further uprisings. Cultural legacy. Over time, the Zoot became absorbed into broader Arab and Islamic culture, though some descendants may still carry oral traditions or traces of Indian ancestry. They are sometimes cited in historical texts as an example of early non Arab populations who interacted with, resisted, or assimilated into Islamic caliphates. Summary: the Zoot were Indian migrants, mainly Jats from Sindh, who were brought to Iraq during the early Islamic period. They are known for their rebellion against the Abbasid Caliph and lived in the southern marshlands of Iraq. Their story is a lesser known but important part of early Islamic and Middle Eastern history. Okay, that's some good stuff right there. That's not exactly verbatim what I heard about this group of people. From my understanding, they're a mythical group of people. They may or may not actually exist. But that's what ChatGPT had to say about this particular group of people. Now, I'm not one to dispute it because, again, I'm somewhat ignorant on this topic. So I'm learning as I go along. Give me a second. So, what I can gather from this is that these people weren't exactly the same region where Islam originates from. Um, religious texts to these been the basis of me a study or a stream about this, all my sources, because I don't think that any of them are 100% correct because they're from a human being's perspective. But let's see what Google says. Al Zutt refers to the Jats, a community of people from South Asia, especially the Indus region, who migrated to the Middle East first as merchants for the Umayyad and Abbasid caliphates, and later as part of the Zut rebellion. The term also appears in the Islamic tradition or hadith. Al Zut is described as black, tall beings who encountered the Prophet Muhammad, though interpretations of this encounter vary, with some viewing it as a sexual act and others as jinn crowded to listen to the Quran. The Zut people, origins. The Zut were people from the Indus region, present day India and Pakistan, who migrated into Mesopotamia centuries before the rise of Islam. Their role in Islamic history. They served as mercenary soldiers for the Umayyad and Abbasid Caliphate, settling in areas as present day Iraq. The Zut rebellion. A large number of Zut fought against the Muslims in the Ridda Wars, but later joined them and participated in the infamous Zut rebellion against the Abbasid Caliphate. Al Zut in Islamic traditions, specifically the Hadith, the encounter. A specific Hadith describes an encounter between the Prophet Muhammad and a group of people named Al Zut. Their physical description. They are described as tall and black. Controversy. The passage is controversial, with some interpretations claiming that Al Zut engaged in a sexual act with the Prophet, while others argue it describes jinn who were crowding around him to listen to him recite the Quran. Interpretation. Some Muslims interpret the word, I can't pronounce that word, Arabic for to ride, used in the Hadith as an idiom for being physically crowded or gathered rather than literal act of riding. Okay. So from my understanding, that what I just read to you right there is what I was introduced to Al Zut from, right? That particular hadith that was mentioned in the last part of what I was just reading, right? I can't pronounce the word. Clearly, I do not speak Arabic, but from further investigation that I will highlight here shortly, I'm not the only one that believes what this. I mean, I don't believe it because it's. I wasn't there to prove it, but what I'm saying is, I believe that the word that was mentioned that I just had on the screen does mean to ride. And I don't see how you can ride another human being and interpret that as they were crowding around him to listen to the word of the Quran. I don't see how you can correlate that. If they're jinn, you would think that they would know this word. The prophet allegedly was illiterate as well. So I'm not understanding that particular part. But again, it's really not for me to judge in this situation. I'm just giving my personal opinion from what the text says, and from what the scholars say. Because again, I cannot read the Quran correctly because I do not speak Arabic. So right now, what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and play a video and just let someone else explain it a little more in depth than I can. Give me 1 second. We're just getting the video together now. One second here.
well-respected Islamic texts, all of which are being taught in Al Azhar, and all of which I have listed volume and page numbers in the description of this video. The hadith, which is narrated one of Islam's most reliable and trustworthy transmitters of a hadith, goes as follows. Brace yourself. Abdullah begins by telling us Muhammad called on him. Night had fallen. Muhammad made a line in the sand, most likely a circle, and told Abdullah. Muhammad then left his startled companion and walked into the desert night, about the distance of a hurled stone, says Abdullah. Before long, our narrator saw a group of men, he does not specify how many, who, quote, appeared to be Al Zutt. He describes them as, quote, tall, lean, and naked. Other Islamic sources say these Zutt were a black-skinned people, and we'll get into that later. After describing them, Allah goes on, here's a problematic part, to say, quote, they went to and began to ride the Prophet of Allah. Literally, that's what the Arabic says. These tall, black, naked men rode Muhammad, the Arabic word, Yarkaboon, which I will discuss, also be translated as mount, and line of protection, Muhammad, quote, I was extremely terrified by them. So I sat down. With the coming of dawn, they began to depart. Then the Prophet of Allah returned slowly. Described in the sources as very tall, very dark-skinned, very lean, strong, and hardy, and often used for labor-intensive work. In early Arabic ethnographies and literary works, Al Zutt are also depicted as being very sexual and virile, with very large penises. Not only does it have the same exact meaning as in copulating with a woman. In fact, several Islamic sources, for example, while commenting on the famous hadith, also in Musnad ibn Hanbal, where Muhammad says, quote, women, dogs, and donkeys cancel a man's prayer. Al-Qurtubi, one of Islam's most It's also interesting to note that when Al Zutt begins circling and trying to reach our terrified narrator, Abdullah, which these naked men hidden in the desert night deemed normal or acceptable among the Arabs of Muhammad's time. Now, during the debates I've watched over this hadith, others, including many former Muslims, regularly make even more troubling connections. For example, they cite the well-known hadith where Muhammad is asked, quote, will the people of paradise have sex? And his answer, quote, yes, with a vagina that never tires and a penis that never weakens. The phrase a penis that never weakens is identical to the aforementioned description of Al Zutt's genitalia, suggesting, as many former Muslims are quick to point out, that Muhammad so enjoyed his night with these naked black men that he went on to secretly enshrine its most notable aspect, powerful penises that never weaken or... To sum up, based on numerous Islamic texts, especially Musnad ibn Hanbal and Al-Qurtubi's tafsir, and several other historical and ethnographical texts, again, see this video's description for references, how this hadith is understood, especially by ex-Muslims who cite it as cause for their apostasy, is as follows. And before I proceed, please note that the following summary is not based on my thoughts or words, but rather the words of, first, as we saw, well-respected Muslim texts, and second, those who use this hadith as a polemic against Islam. I'm trying to give you Muslims. All right, here we go. Muhammad took his close companion, Abdullah, into the desert at night. He warned him to wait behind a line and went off at a distance, apparently for a pre-planned rendezvous. besides in the sources aiding or mounting the Prophet all night long. They also tried to reach him, but Abdullah immediately sat down, apparently to protect that one part of his body they were trying to access. As the sun rose, these naked men began to depart, even as Muhammad returned in pain, limping towards Abdullah and saying how Al Zutt had injured him. He then lays in his companion's lap and falls asleep. Finally, as a reflection of what Muhammad thought of that night, he went on to enshrine it as an aspect of paradise where the, quote, penis never weakens, end quote. Okay, that's what's being said and what loud shouting matches take place over. You watch several satellite Arabic language shows call in and ask an expert chances are that 1, Al Zutt were not humans, but rather jinn. 2, this occurred during Muhammad's famous meeting with the jinn, known in Islamic tradition as the Night of the Jinn, when the Prophet recited the Quran to them. And 3, it's known that Abdullah bin Mas'ud was not present with Muhammad during the Night of the jinn. So therefore this hadith must be weak and likely fabricated. Such are the responses against it.
So I just want to pause it right there. And the reason why is because, like, I don't believe any of this text, right? Because I'm a non-believer. But I just wanted to highlight and point out the fact that the apologetics for this is that they are jinn. I'm not aware if anybody at home is watching this, but do you know what a jinn is? And that's Jinn, right? I don't feel like that's an excuse, right, or a valid apologetic, because now you would have to prove to me that jinns exist. And to put it into context, jinns are like the equivalent to like little demons that can't beat you, but they could just influence you to do things and get inside of your body and things like that. So how is that making this more believable? I mean, I get the fact that you could, just clearly claim that this is not a human being and they really didn't have sex with, Muhammad, blessed be upon him, or whatever they say. But you're only making this story more far-fetched. So I don't see how that would be an apologetic in this case. I mean, it would be maybe a deflection at best, but it doesn't make this shit even more valid. It just makes it to me from the outside looking in look more ridiculous, if anything. I mean, it is embarrassing because a lot of these individuals that are religious, no matter what the religion is, a lot of them tend to be very homophobic, which is a different conversation, and they don't want to see their prophet look like something that they belittle. I understand, but for you to rebuttal back that it is jinn is just completely ridiculous. I would accept the response as, oh, well, it's not the Quran, it's a hadith. I would accept that quicker than I would that this is jinn. That's just bullshit. And even and also, if it is jinn, that just leads me to another point. Like, these religions are racist. Why does everything evil or demonic or undelightful or ungodly have to be black? Why? You know what I mean? And in this book, Muhammad says himself, if you want to know what the devil looks like, look at the black man. So either way, this shit is bullshit. I don't get it.
This hadith. As we have seen, however, and as those who use this hadith as a polemic against Islam point out, the earliest references to Al Zutt all depict them as humans. And dismissing the hadith as weak on the claim that Abdullah was not present for the night of the jinn is itself very weak, since the night in question had nothing to do with the jinn, meaning there is no reason to doubt the words of Abdullah, a chief and highly trusted transmitter of hadith. By the way, I decided to ask ChatGPT what it thought were innocent and non-loaded questions, and as might be expected, it answered me honestly enough. First, I asked it whether Al Zutt were humans or jinn, to which it responded, quote, in Muslim historical sources, the Zutt were consistently described as humans, not jinn. They were portrayed as a real ethnic group, most often associated with India or modern Pakistan, and as a migrant and terrorly. I then asked ChatGPT to give me a physical description of Al Zutt based on early Arabic sources, and it said, quote, in literary and anecdotal texts, they are grouped together with other southern or dark-skinned people, all of whom have the following traits: sexual potency, prominent genitalia, and associations with physical strength and virility. Anyway, so there you have it. Here is a perfect example of why that should not be so quickly dismissed as later forgeries to present. And here is being used as a powerful against Islam.
Okay. That's actually the end of that video. But that's the video that I was talking about earlier when I mentioned how I was introduced to it. It was introduced to me on TikTok through that video, basically as kind of a rebuttal to what some believers in Islam would come up to say. So I decided to do a somewhat study of it and, highlight a few different things and, show what I've seen and look up other sources. I'm gonna read a little bit from Wikipedia here. Give me 1 second. And how you doing, Ouija666? I'm gonna play another video here too. Zoot is an Arab-sized form of Jat, originally inhabitants of the lower Indus Valley. Jats were present in Mesopotamia from the 5th century AD since the times of the Sassanian Empire, although their main migration occurred after the establishment of Umayyad Caliphate. They were one of the prominent ethnic groups in Lower Iraq during the Islamic Golden Age, supplying mercenary soldiers to the Islam states. Their mention fades from Arab chronicles after the 11th century, the original homeland. At the time of the Umayyad conquest of Sin in the early 8th century, Zoot populated Makran and Tehran. As far as the east bank of Indus River, where cities like Mansura and Multan were located. According to Ibn Khordadbeh, yachts safeguarded the entire trade route in the region, which was known as the Balad Al Zutt, land of the Jats. Makran had a significant number of Zoot at the time, or before the Muslim conquest, who had moved eastward into Sind as well in the following centuries. Joji says Zoot were people originating from Sin and claims that they were distributed throughout the Sassanid Empire. Al-Khazrimi also elucidates their origins, attributing their roots to Sin and noting that Arabization of their original name, Zit or Zoot, and further highlights that Zoot were employed to protect Bagrak, which is roads, in in Arabic literature. However, Sin referred to a larger region that the present province of Sin and Makram and the land of Sin designated the Indus Valley, or the area traversed by Indus River. In early Islamic Arabia, the commercial activities of Zoot led to their settlements in Arabia. They were evidently present in Arabia before the advent of Islam, mainly around the Persian Gulf, and are known to have interacted with Muhammad. Muhammad reportedly compared Moses, with them in physique and stated him to be of brown complexion, straight hair, and tall stature, resembling Zoot. On another occasion, when Aisha fell ill, her nephew sent for a Zoot physician to treat her. According to Al-Tabari, some Zoot participated in the Ridda Wars against Muslims. In Sassanid Empire, Emperor Bahram is said to have adopted a policy of tribal resettlement in the coastal regions. Due to it, a number of Zoot migrated, often with great herds of water buffalo, to the marshland of southern Iraq, where they introduced large-scale rice farming. They may have come in the search of pastures there, but their presence is indicated by a canal called Nar Al Zutt in Iraq, as well as distinct called Zoot in Kazakhstan and Bakhran. They also inhabited the city of Humat Al Zutt in Kazakhstan. Last Sassanid Empire, Yazd III called Zoot from Sind to help in his war against Arabs. They fought as mercenary cavalrymen in the Sassanid Empire, later defecting to the side of Muslims. When Muslims besieged the city of Azwaq in Iran in 640, Zoot put up strong resistance in the defense of the city along with Persian Azwaran, later as did Azwaran, who were known as Azwawira during the Caliphate period. They settled in Basra as allies of Banu Tamid. Okay, this is the last little part I'm going to read. In Rashidud and Umayyad Caliphates, the Zoot formed a large population of the garrison town of Basra, where they became allies of the Arab tribe of Banu Hanzala in the intertribe tribal warfare. The treasury of Basra was guarded by 40 or 400 Zoot soldiers, which is a big difference, during the reign of Ali. Under their chief Abu Salama Al Zutti, who were, according to the version narrated by Abu Miknaf, killed while protecting Beit al-Mal. When rebels under Talha and Zubar occupied the city, Zoot regiments had fought along with Ali in the Battle of Camel in 656 under their chief Ali bin Nur. In 670, a large number of Zoot, along with Osberon, were moved into coastal cities of Syria, such as Antioch, Beirut, and Tripoli, replacing earlier Greek population, and a quarter in Antioch became known after them. This was an attempt by Umayyad Caliph Muawiyah I to ward off any possible naval invasions of Byzantine Empire. During this period, the role of Zoot and the associated groups was to guard the governors of different provinces as well as to suppress revolts. They also acted as special troops to guard provincial treasuries. Zoot had been in Mesopotamia for long enough that they were considered distinct from Sinhis or Indians. In Iraq and elsewhere, they had their separate units under their own leaders, giving them a status of distinct sub-tribe in the Muslim society. Okay. I think that's a pretty good explanation of who these people are. From every source, it details them as dark-skinned people from India, Pakistan, the northern area, what we call Pakistan, which we know was named, I think, by the UN or something like that, or the United States or Britain. I'll fact check that later, but I'm pretty sure that that's some kind of a new country. Well, sort of a newer country because it has been recently formed, but it does denote them as basically darker Indians. Now, whether if you believe these people are jinn or not is a different story. But like I was saying a little while ago, how come everything negative about Abrahamic religion refers to Black people? And these people are not even African. These people are Asian, clearly. But if they're jinn, that just shows, that these religions have something against people with darker skin, which I don't understand. But that's just my interpretation of it. The word ride, I don't see how they would be using that kind of slang term for, people just trying to hear the word. If these people are jinn, why would they need a human being to tell them the word? Right? That's like, a mistake by God, in my opinion. Okay, you created jinn without them knowing the word, and they got to go to a human to hear it. But their job is to make humans do evil things. I don't get that. That's pretty weak. That's pretty weak. As apologetics, but I'm not sure because at the end of the day, I don't believe a word in any of these books. So none of it's true. I'm not going to argue with anyone whether jinns exist or not because I don't believe not a word in it. So let me play a video here. I'm not going to be here too much longer now.
Muhammad was famous among his followers for being able to handle 9 or even 11 women and girls in a single night. Consider a few passages. Sahih al-Bukhari, 5068. Narrated Anas, the Prophet used to go round, have sexual relations with all his wives in one night, and he had 9 wives. Sahih al-Bukhari, 5215. Narrated Anas bin Malik, the Prophet used to pass by, have sexual relation with all his wives. Check out the chapter heading. Whoever had sexual intercourse in the boiling, sweaty Arabian desert with all his wives and then took one bath only.
Ugh. Brother, ugh.
Try not to imagine the smell by the time he climbed on top of wife number 9. Sahib bin Malik had promised him all his wives in a round. And Saeed said on the authority of Qatada that Anas had told him about 9 wives only, not 11. Muhammad's followers used to say that he was given the strength, the sexual strength, of 30 men. That's an oddly specific number, isn't it? The Prophet was given the strength of 30 men. An average man has no problem having sex with his wife. If a healthy 2 or 3 wives, I don't see why he sex with 2 or 3 wives in a single evening. So why didn't Muhammad's followers say that he was given the strength of 3 or 4 men? Why specifically? For us, modern, we know how Muhammad received the strength men and adolescent boys were in the ancient and medieval periods. You may have heard some things about ancient thing going on with adolescent boys. Even after the spread of Islam continued centuries in the Muslim world. Mature, immature, or male homosexual behavior was pervasive in Islamic societies, North Africa, Western Central Asia, from 8th to 19th centuries. Mature, immature, a beard about 16, 17. Adult men were scorned if they were passive partners. Manly behavior was to be active. Idle talk, nor incitement to sin, and there wait upon them youths for them, as if they were hidden here was a well-entrenched custom from antiquity to at least the 1950s. Matchmakers made marriage-like arrangements between men and adolescent boys. The boy got a gift larger than bride prices for females. Mother, Robin Mom said they will kill for a boy, never for a woman. Again, all an important role in the development of boys into men. Mature, immature, male homosexual behavior was highly organized in this warrior society. Homosexual intercourse was essential to boys' physical and spiritual development. It supposed the seat of male power. The belief was that insemination grew the boys into inseminate him for months or years. Some boys chose their own inseminator. Insemination was thought essential for growth. Between ages 10 and 14, each boy acquired
hired an adoptive father, an older male who was his mentor and regularly inseminated him, necessary to make him strong. Males lived in sex-segregated men's houses from a young age. Mature, immature male homosexual activity was essential for boys' development. It began in male initiations for boys ranging in age from 7 to 14. Semen was viewed necessary for growth, strong warrior. So they believed that virility and manliness could be injected into a boy by a man. There were some.
I just wanted to pause it right there and just, if anybody that's just doing this, none of these ideas reflect any of my beliefs. I did not know. I wasn't aware of any of this, and I didn't know that. But it does debunk one myth, all the shit that he's saying, right? Because what I'm starting to hear a lot lately is that homosexuality is or LGBTQ is a Western idea. I don't think so. I don't think so. I think that even though we may not want to admit it, but it's natural human behavior. The reason why I say that is because you can see this, well, maybe not in depth as he's saying, but we see this type of behavior in other species, right? Especially primates. But what he's saying is fucking crazy. I never heard none of that ideology ever in my life. I never knew that people thought like that in those days. Well, I knew that the Greeks may have had some, thought process similar to that, but this shit is wild.
World. And in the 7th century, cultures were interacting and colliding because of trade. Prophet of Allah was a caravan trader. He spent years having discussions with various people he met, and he had a tendency to believe what people told him. Even much later, long after he started, Surah 9, verse 61. And among them are those who torment the prophet and say he is an ear. What did they mean when they called him an ear? Ibn Asad gives the historical background. I have heard that it was of him, a man named Nabtal, that the apostle said, whoever wants to see Satan, let him take a look at Nabtal ibn al-Harith. He was a sturdy black dark, he had said to the hypocrites. It was he who said, Muhammad is all ears. If anyone tells him anything, he believes it. And what he is like calling a spy an eye. The accusation was that the prophet was gullible, accepting whatever he heard. According to some, there were those around the prophet who said, we say what we wish, and we swear to him, and he believed drink camel urine as medicine. This stuff is endless in the Muslim sources. Where did this nonsense come from? Muhammad had an interesting way of taking practices that were geared towards children and applying them to adults. For example, in Muhammad's time, people thought that if a woman breastfeeds a child she's not related to, the child becomes related to her. They're claiming that this works even with a grown man. A grown man can absorb a woman's breast milk and become her son. Sunan an-Nasai 33:21. This is the chapter of breastfeeding an adult. And we read, Zainab bint Abi Salama said, I heard a woman, messenger of Allah, and said, O messenger of Allah, I see displeasure in the face of Abu Hudayfa, her husband, when Salim enters upon me. Salim was a grown man. Her husband, Abu Hudayfa, didn't like a grown man being around his wife because he was worried that they might commit adultery. The messenger of Allah said, breastfeed him. She said, he has a beard. He said, breastfeed him, and that will take away the displeasure in the face of Abu Hudayfa. She said, she breastfed a grown man with a beard, and this made the man her son. So her husband was no longer worried about his wife committing adultery with the young man.
Okay, I wanted to pause it right there again and just address the nonsense that all of us are clearly hearing. Like I've never heard such crazy shit. I thought that when I heard the camel urine and the milk cocktail, I thought nothing could top that. But to think that a person's fucking breast milk can make you their child, when in most cases you would be probably older than these individuals, is just completely idiotic. Sometimes I wish that the Quran was translated more in the United States. This country, most people here that you encounter are Christians. And I think that censors the Quran a lot. But I wish that it was so many versions, like how we have the NIV, the King James Version, blah, 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 how we have so many versions of the Bible. I wish it was that many versions of the Quran and it was that readily available to everyone, just so I could just see this, because the book is only like this thick compared to the Bible that could be that thick, you know what I mean? So I would probably just read it sometimes just for entertainment values. And I'm really like upset that I'm 43 and I'm just not hearing these crazy stories, even though I never believed Islam. I never had a reason to believe it. But just to hear this shit, and for people, you know, that I debate with on a daily basis, like, oh, the Quran is perfect, Islam is perfect, Quran is perfect, and I'm just hearing this shit. It's fucking crazy. And when I say I wish it was translated a little bit more, it's from my understanding that really, if you can't understand Arabic, you really don't have any business, you know, following this religion or even trying to read it, because it's not. Everyone keeps telling me it's not the same thing. I can't prove that positively, but I would think that there's always going to be mistranslations in any fucking thing. But yeah, definitely, I think I'm gonna get me a Quran. I definitely. I don't own a Bible. I don't feel like there's a need to, because it's so ready available online. Any version of it, you can look it up. It'll give you the translations to Greek, Hebrew, and all that shit. But you don't see no shit like that with the Quran. But let me get back to the topic and let him finish this video.
His mouth. By absorbing her breast milk, he was transformed into her son. What else can a grown man absorb? Imagine a man who's known as the ear, hearing about men injecting their manliness and virility into boys. Keep in mind, this man believes that practices that people usually apply to children also work with adults, as with breastfeeding. Suppose this man wants to become the most virile, masculine, potent man on the planet. How would he go about that? He would assemble a team of men known for their sexual prowess. And in Muhammad's time, the men for their sexual prowess, men of Al Zutt, story Al Zutt, are described in the Muslim sources.
According to Islam, were a migrant for this is a very strong and hard and often intensive work. Early melodies and lyrics, Al Zutt are also depicted as being very sexual and virile, with a large penis. In fact, according to one Arabic source, Al-Tishibbahat by Ibn Abi Awan, penis Al Zutt never weakens, meaning their large phalluses never go limp and are ever ready. I'm sorry for the crude language, but this is what the Islamic texts say, verbatim.
Could the men of Al Zutt transfer their virility and manliness into Muhammad? Let's find out by reading a now infamous hadith from Musnad Ahmed. Ibn Masud related, the messenger for me. So he said, Zutt people. Afan narrated, or something like what Afan said, Allah willing, they didn't. He and the Prophet of Allah began to recite to them. And they started to move closer and lean around me and get in my way. And I became intensely terrified of them. Sat down, something like that. He sat down, thus protecting the part of him they were after. And when the morning light broke, they began to go away like that. Then the messenger of Allah came back exhausted and in pain, I'll bet. Practically from how they, he said, indeed, or something like that. Then the messenger of Allah put his head in my lap, something like that. And the men came with that he was given the strength of 30 men. 30 men of Al Zutt gathered in the desert and in their masculinity into the Prophet of Islam. Most powerful. Of course, the effects might wear off after a while. Sometimes Muhammad would need to top off the tank, so to speak. That's when his companion Dihya al-Kalbi would come to the rescue. As Muhammad's companion Hudhaifa said, the people used to enter upon the Prophet and prohibited from upon him with disturbing. He was who, by the way, was the highest.
So I just wanted to mention that again, this is a little bit more detailed than the video. I don't know if you've been watching the whole time, everyone, but the video that he showed is the video that I showed earlier, and I feel like he's actually doing a better description than that actual guy, and he's copying from his footage. I never heard nobody put it like that. As many times as I've heard this Al Zutt phrase, I've never heard anyone describe that as something that Muhammad would take based off of their ideology for those days about them interjecting manhood into another young boy, which is fucked up, by the way. So if that ever happened to anyone out there watching, I don't condone any of that type of behavior, but it does highlight the fact that Muhammad may have been a sexual deviant. I'm not 100% sure if he actually existed, so I'll give him that. He may have never walked the face of this earth, but from the stories of the Quran and Hadith, they do describe someone who, if these were these days, would definitely be in prison somewhere and definitely would have some sort of mental illness and definitely would probably need to be taken away from the rest of the population, whether if it's male or females, because now it exhibits the fact. I've always looked at him as P3DO because Aisha was 6, 7, 8, 9 years old, depending on what you believe. But now it's just adds emphasis to that. It's like he doesn't discriminate. And from what I'm starting to learn, the more I dig deeper into different religions and history, it's almost like that was just a common fucking thing to do. It's the man, that's fucked up. That is fucked up. But that's my conclusion on it. It's just like that was just regular common behavior in those days, and it's just fucking crazy.
Came to the Prophet for some matter, hoping to meet him alone. When I arrived at the door, I looked and found a curtain covering the door. I raised it and was about to enter. That's what we are accustomed to do. Then I saw Dihya beside the Prophet, who was sleeping, and his head on a rough night. He do after a meeting with Dihya al-Kalbi, he put his head on Dihya's lap and passed out. Later, Muhammad told his followers that when they see him with Dihya al-Kalbi, it's actually the angel Gabriel. Sure, it's the angel Gabriel, conveniently disguised as Dihya al-Kalbi. And Dihya was always to leave his yard. Sahih al-Bukhari, 232. Narrated Aisha, I used to wash the semen off the clothes of the Prophet, and even then I used to notice one or more spots on them. Aisha would wash the semen off his clothes. She would scratch it from his garment. She would scrape it off with her hand. Small price to be for having such a manly husband, though. Am I right? So, we finally understand how Muhammad got the strength of 30 men. He told an elite squad of 30 men of Al Zutt, known for their large penises, to meet him in the desert. He told his companion Abdullah to watch, assumed the position. Then the Al Zutt showed up and said, it's Zuttin time, and zooted all over him.
Wait a minute. Did he say stand behind the Diddy line? Woo.
All night long. But this gave Muhammad the stamina to have sex with 9 or 11 women and girls in a single night. So, win-win, I guess, except for the one bath part.
What's that? What's that, brother?
Now, we've solved one mystery, but another mystery remains. If relationships between men and adolescent boys were so common in the ancient world, as numerous studies have shown, why are they so surprising and disturbing to us now? What changed? The good news is that we know exactly what changed. But you'll have to click on Inspiring Philosophy's video to find out.
That was a lot. That was a whole lot. One thing that I noticed at the last second, right before I clicked off the video, did you notice his charm? He had a cross on. I'm gonna say, in defense of Muslims, believers of Islam, he has a little bit of bias in him. I would say that. I would definitely say that. I'm not going to discredit what he said, but I would say that he is definitely biased because of that. I do feel like because of that bias, it made the video somewhat funnier. But at the same time, I did see another video, and I don't think that the person was biased in that way. I don't think that the person was Christian that described Al Zutt in the previous video that me and the other person had referenced today. So I don't know. Maybe he was probably influenced in the fact that he probably was a former Christian. I don't know, but I'm definitely getting me a Quran and some hadiths. I'm definitely going to purchase this literature because I need to have a good laugh because this shit is fucking hilarious. I just hope when I do get them, and I know I think this is a waste of breath what I'm about to say. I just hope that it's as explicit as they're showing. Not that I want to, hear about, XYZ happening, but I mean, maybe I do. But I just keep hearing that when you have the English translation of it, and I've heard this from native Arabic speakers and people that are from Islamic-based countries. I don't know if I'm saying that grammatically correct or not, but they have told me verbatim on numerous occasions, if you can't speak Arabic, it's not the same thing. And they said the reason why is because it's kind of like the same situation when we talk about the slave Bible and we talk about African Americans, right? That gave us what they wanted us to know, right? They gave us the instruction manual. They gave us somewhat of the dumbed down version, maybe for a different reason than that, well, opposite reasons, but still the same concept, right? They're trying to make it politically correct. They're not giving you the explicit raw version. They're not giving you the real truth. And that's what they keep saying. And who am I to argue with these people When I can't fucking read that shit, they read right to left instead of left to right. So I'm gonna have to take their advice on it because a lot of these people are former Muslims. So I'm just gonna hope when I purchase this literature that it says what we're seeing it say. I speak on that because the other day I showed the one video about Zoot. And there's a person in there that is in the atheist community. She's very smart. She's a medical student. I forget exactly what type of medicine she studies. Don't get me the line, but she's cool. She referenced it while we were online, and she does not speak Arabic. She only knows English and probably other European languages, right? And she was basically saying that it doesn't say what the video was saying. She's like, I don't see it saying that. So again, I'm gonna have to believe what what these Arabic people are telling me, that it's the dumbed down version and it's not the truth. We'll see. Stay tuned to that. Whenever I look up, these verses in the Quran or Hadith, it doesn't make sense. It's like, I don't know, it's like gibberish. Even in English, it's like you're talking about some story that doesn't make any sense. So I don't know. But I think overall, today I've learned that the Al Zutt would be Indian, North Pakistani people. They would be dark-skinned people. Before I thought they would be African people, but that's not the description that they're really providing. What else have I learned? That's about it. Except for the fact that I learned that this was normal practice in those times, so it wouldn't be so much significant to Islam. I knew that Muhammad was engaging into sexual acts with men, and I kind of figured that they weren't jinn, but it just further shows me that in those times that things were completely fucked up. A lot of times when I reference Aisha's age, or if I'm talking about the Bible and I talk about the Virgin Mary, well, those times people did da 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 da, and there's no excuse. It doesn't matter how long ago it was. If this type of shit happened, it was fucked up. There was no excuse for this type of behavior. Muhammad himself, I know, was groomed. And I think that the last gentleman that I had on the screen basically described that. That's where he got his power source from, or whatever, to do these heinous acts. I don't know. I would take that as that's where the perversion started. That's where I would take it from, because he was molested as a child. Definitely. That's no excuse for his behavior. I don't see how anybody that knows this shit would take any of this for face value as truthful, as knowledge, as a prophet, or as a moral having person. That's another debate they always have. Where does your moral standards come from? I made them up. Well, where do they come from? I made them up. Oh no, you got them from your parents in the Bible, or you got them. No, I didn't. Everybody knows right from wrong, essentially, right? There are things that people do out of necessity, whether if it's for basic needs, drugs, greed, things like that. But it doesn't excuse the fact that they know better. So the more I dig deeper into Abrahamic religions, I'm not saying one's worse than the other. They fucked up. They're fucked up. Yeah, they're fucked up. I just think that with Islam, I'm learning a lot more. So now I'm just seeing it. I want to thank everybody for stopping by. Thank you, Ouija666. Thank you, Tia, for stopping by. And everyone else. I'm probably going to come back on a little bit later with politics. It's probably going to be about Dame Dash, his situation. I feel like he's crashing out right in front of us. That's my personal opinion. I don't know. But we're definitely going to talk about that. We were supposed to go live on Friday, so we postponed it till today. So I'll be back around 8 o'clock or so. If not, catch me Wednesday or Thursday on AAA Podcast Sports. And if that doesn't take place, I'll definitely be back here next Sunday around church time with Faith Lies and Fusion. I don't know the topic yet, but I'll definitely be here. I want to thank everybody again, and good night.